Hello, everyone. Thank you for being a part of this class today. Hope you're doing well and God is watching over you and blessing you. I'm doing this class a little bit earlier than usual and probably will get it out earlier because we are meeting up with our son and his wife for lunch in Warrenton, and then we're going to bring Everett home with us. So we'll get to spend a couple days with him. I'll take him home, I guess, probably on Monday. But that's good news for us because as if you have grandchildren, you know it's always a lot of fun and a blessing to have them around. So let me begin with the word of prayer. Father, as we open your word today, may our hearts be open and our minds be ready to hear what you have to say. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so we are in Acts chapter 19, and we are going to be looking at this is Paul in Ephesus. Okay, so last week he was also in Ephesus, and today there is a riot that takes place in Ephesus because of Paul and his teaching. So, Acts 19, verse 23, about that time there arose a great disturbance about the way. Now, I'm going to take a fairly long sidebar here and talk about the way. The Way was an early name for the church. They were known as the Way. We've already heard it in Acts several times. I don't believe I highlighted it. I know I didn't highlight it like I'm going to today. But in Acts chapter 9, verse 2, we run into this. Meanwhile, this is when Paul was going after the Christians. He went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues in Damascus, so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. So that's what Saul was calling it, the way. We've got to get rid of the way. The way is a horrible sect, and we need to squash it. Okay. In Acts chapter 19, which is where we are. Okay, but back up just to last week's. It says, but some of them became obstinate. They refused to believe and publicly maligned the way. So Paul left them, and he took the disciples with him and had discussions daily in the lecture hall of Tyrannus. So you remember the part where we talked about Paul moving to that lecture hall, but it was because they were maligning the way. Later in this chapter, which is where what I just read from today's reading, about that time there rose a great disturbance about the way. In chapter 22, Paul is describing his conversion. He says, I persecuted the followers of this way to their death, arresting both men and women, throwing them into prison. And in chapter 24, his trial before Felix, he says, however, I admit that I worship the God of our ancestors as a follower of the way, which they call a sect. Verse 22, same chapter. Then Felix, who was well acquainted with the way, adjourned the proceedings. So it was a common term for the early church, calling them the way. Now, you can wonder, like, where did that originate? Why did they do that? And a lot of people tend to agree that it was Jesus saying this about himself. In John chapter 14, Thomas is having this discussion with him, and Thomas says, Lord, we don't know where you're going, so how can we know the way? And Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really knew me, if you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. But Jesus saying, I am the way, that phrase seemed to catch on. Also in Acts, And we studied this, although I didn't emphasize it. When Priscilla and Aquila heard him, meaning Apollos, they invited him to their home and explained to him the way of God more adequately. Now, I think in that case, it's not so much a technical term as much a name of the church, as much as they see it as the way. And so Apollos needs to understand the way to God, the way of God. He needs to understand that, because that's what we're about. Peter also writes about this in 2 Peter chapter 2. He's talking about false prophets and false teachers, and he says, 2 Peter 2:2, many will follow their depraved conduct and will bring the way of truth into disrepute. The way. Finally, Hebrews chapter 10. The Hebrew writer writes this, therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way, open for us through the curtain that is his body. And since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with the full assurance that faith brings, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience and having our bodies washed with pure water. So he's talking about that Jesus has brought a new way, and we are part of that way. So I think their mindset was that we are fellow travelers on earth searching for the way. What is the way? Which way should we go? What is the way to God? And there's always people, wanting to say, well, this is the way and that's the way, and so the question would be, is it pleasure? Is it wealth? Is it power? What is the right way? What is the right way to live? What is the right way to go? Are we actually going somewhere? Is there any meaning behind any of this? There's always been, and I guess always will be, people that say, there's no way, just live. We're just random people on this random rock, floating out in the universe, doing our random things. And it doesn't really matter. I'm getting kind of, my fancy light here is getting a little bit, well, that's not, getting a little too bright. Oh well, it's hard to complain about the sun, isn't it? Anyway. Okay, so this gives new meaning to the word lost, which, by the way, people do not like. The word lost has kind of come into disrepute, whether you realize that or not. Not among Christians, but among non-Christians that kind of don't appreciate that. I think this is just a little too bright. I think, well, sorry. Let's just carry on. Let's do the best we can. All right. So, but like I was saying, this gives new meaning to the word lost, and that is that people that don't know the way. And we do. Why? Go back to John chapter 14. Because Jesus is the way. So as we wrap up this sidebar, it sounds more like a journey than a set of steps or a moral code. This is the way we live. This is the way to God. That just seems different than having here are the 5 steps, or here is the moral code you need to live by. Do these things. It is more of a way of life and a way to God. Okay, so back to Acts. Okay, so what Paul and others are saying is the way. Okay, everything they're saying about this is the way. This is the way to live. This is the way to God. Yes, That what they are teaching is bothering some powerful people. So that's what we see here in our story in Acts. About that time there arose a great disturbance about the way. A silversmith named Demetrius, who made silver shrines of Artemis, brought in a lot of business for the craftsmen there. You can never discount the place of money, okay, in society. He called them together along with the workers in related trades and said, "You know, my friends, that we receive a good income from this business. And you see and hear how this fellow Paul has convinced and led astray large numbers of people here in Ephesus, and particularly the whole province of Asia. He says that gods made by human hands are no gods at all. Our fake gods aren't gods. The gods that we are making are not gods." Like this, Demetrius, this makes no sense. It reminds me of the time when, you remember when Gideon tore down the altar of Baal, and people got so upset about it. They need to stand up for Baal, and it was Gideon's father that said, but Joash replied to the hostile crowd around him, "Are you going to plead Baal's cause? Are you trying to save him? Whoever fights for him shall be put to death by morning. If Baal really is God, he can defend himself when someone breaks down his altar." And our fake gods, we got to protect our fake gods. I also think of the time when the Philistines captured the ark. This was, in 1 Samuel, and it says, when the people of Ashdod saw what was happening, this is when they bring the Ark of the Covenant. They get it from Israel. They defeat Israel and they take the Ark, and it's terrible. And they bring that ark and set it in the temple of Dagon, their god. And when they come out in the morning, Dagon has fallen on his face. And so on the ground in front of it, like bowing down to the altar. So they set the altar back up. And then the next morning they come in, and not only is he on his face, but his head and his hands have come off, and they're sitting on the threshold of the door. And so when the people of Ashdod saw what was happening, they said, "The ark of the God of Israel must not stay with us, because his hand is heavy on us and on Dagon, our God." So we got to get this thing out of the temple, because our God can't stand up to this. What kind of a God do you have? I guess I just feel the same way here. These guys are all having this meeting to supposedly protect their God. What kind of a God do you have? And also, you cannot separate also the fact that we make a lot of money off of this God. And we can't have this guy coming into our town and into our province and jeopardizing what we've got going here. Just reminds me of a movie one time that said, "Hey, we've got to protect our phony baloney jobs." Anyway, so verse 27, "There is danger not only that our trade will lose its good name, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will be discredited, and the goddess herself, who is worshipped throughout the province of Asia and the world, will be robbed of her divine majesty." So this is the problem that they are seeing, and they're up against, and Paul is in the middle of this. Paul is causing this. All right, verse 28. "When they heard this, they were furious and began shouting, 'Great is Artemis of the Ephesians.' Soon the whole city was in an uproar. The people seized Gaius and Aristarchus, Paul's traveling companions from Macedonia, and all of them rushed into the theater together. Paul wanted to appear before the crowd, but the disciples would not let him. Even some of the officials of the province, friends of Paul, sent him a message begging him not to venture into the theater. So the city gets whipped into a frenzy. And I think you can think of some of the protests that we've had in the last 12 months in this country. Um, on both sides, I guess on the political spectrum, there's been these massive protests, and some of them got unruly. And this one is that way. That's the kind of protest this is. It's very unruly, and it's also very dangerous. Okay, so you're not gonna want your kids to go, venture into this crowd just to see what's happening. You want to go watch the riot. No, no, no. People better stay home. This could get dangerous. And yet you can see the courage of Paul and his missionary heart, because he wants to go into the crowd. He wants to go address the crowd. He knows what he needs to say. He knows that what they're doing is not based on truth, and he has the truth. I have the way. This Demetrius doesn't have the way at all. Demetrius and all of these guys, they're leading you the wrong way. Jesus Christ is the way, not some fake God of yours. That's not the way. But I also want to say that on Paul's side, it appears a little naive that he would want to go into the crowd to think that he can somehow say something that will make a difference. But I also think it's not just being naive. It is also his strong belief in the power of the gospel and the power of the way to convince people. And I think Paul kind of always thinks like, if I sacrifice my life to save some, I'm willing to do that. That's not a problem for me. All right. So what we see here is this brings us to verse 35. The city clerk quieted the crowd and said, "Fellow Ephesians, doesn't all the world know that the city of Ephesus is the guardian of the temple of the great Artemis and of her image which fell from heaven?" Doesn't everybody know that? Therefore, since these facts are undeniable, you ought to calm down and not do anything rash. These facts, the fact that the image of Artemis fell to the ground and we found it here in Ephesus, everybody knows that. That's a fact. and so it's interesting, isn't it, that the people are quieted not by the truth. Paul cannot come in and speak the truth to this crowd. The only thing that quiets them is a myth, the lie. It's not true, but that's what quiets them. They're willing to listen to the lie. They will not listen to the truth. And everybody is telling Paul, do not go in there and speak the truth. They will not listen to the truth. Instead, they listen to the lie. And so this city clerk gets up and tells them the lie, and basically gets them to quiet down. You have brought these men here, though they have neither robbed temples nor blasphemed our goddess. If then Demetrius and his fellow craftsmen have a grievance against anybody, the courts are open and there are proconsuls. They can press charges. If there is anything further you want to bring up, it must be settled in a legal assembly. As it is, we are in danger of being charged with rioting because of what happened today. In that case, we would not be able to account for this commotion since there's no reason for it. After he had said this, he dismissed the assembly. So, I really believe that what he is saying here about the courts and you want to bring charges against Paul, do it through the courts, is a preview of Paul's future. Because as we carry on in the book of Acts, Paul he is taken to court. There are legal proceedings against him, and he does have to defend himself against rulers and authorities. It's what's coming for Paul. Overall, I'm trying to look at this lesson, at this riot that took place. What what we see is a clash of two kingdoms coming at each other head on. It is a clash of two very different ways. There's a lot we can learn from this. One is that the early church did not seem to be apologetic about what they were doing or saying, where they were trying to lead people. They didn't apologize. Paul didn't apologize. Paul didn't want to go back and say, "Oh, hey, we're not trying to, disrupt society. We certainly don't want to hurt your bank account, and we know that you want to be rich. Well, we want to be rich too, and let's kind of make peace here." They didn't. They believed so much in the way and in the gospel and the power of the gospel. They stayed with that, and money could never get between them and the power of the gospel. Another thing that I notice here is that the early church, and I would say God, seemed to see Christianity as more of a way of life and a directional journey than a set of things to do. When you ask Jesus about salvation, okay, he talks about loving God with everything that you are, and loving your neighbor. He also talks about clothing the naked and feeding the hungry and giving a drink to the thirsty and visiting the sick and those that are in prison. And he talks about those in the context of salvation. It just seems to have more to do with love, the way you treat people, the way you live. And I think as opposed to Christianity be presented as a kind of a set of things to believe, that if you believe this set of things, then you're a Christian and everything's fine. Or that you do the things that Christians need to do, like I kind of grew up with the 5 steps: hear, believe, repent, confess, and be baptized. That if you've done those 5 things, then you're good. That's Christianity. Or today, in our society at least, it seems like going to church is the thing. That's what Christianity is. Do you go to church? And if you do, then you're a Christian. That's what it means. And I don't know, taking the Lord's Supper, I don't know. It's just sort of some religious things that you do. And it just seems to me that when you use the word "the way," it gives, I think, a very different connotation. I would say almost a very different definition of what it means to be a Christian. That I am going somewhere, that I am going towards something. I am going towards God. And this is the way. And this is the way back to God. This is and this is the way to live. This is the way to treat people. This is the way to think. This is the way to believe. This is the way to love and to forgive. That's all part of the way. It just seems different than maybe what we present today. And so so as I look back on this, you can see what the early church is going through, particularly what Paul is going through. And I just think it's always worth our while to say, how does that compare to what we go through? How does the stands that they take compare to the stands that we take? How does this all compare? What they're standing up for, what we're standing up for, the way that they live, the way that we live. How do those compare? I think those are worthwhile questions for us to continually ask ourselves. So that's today's lesson, and I want you to think about the way, and Ask yourself if that is not only just a different word, but if it is a different way of thinking. Okay? Let's bow in prayer as we close. Father, thank you for showing us the way, for sending Jesus Christ here so that he could say, I am the way. And may we follow him, Father, every day of the week. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, everybody. I hope you have a great day. Love you. Bye-bye.